Obrien, and I want you to know about my son, Brad Rutkosky. Brad's in a guardianship, and I'm not allowed to see him, and he's not allowed to speak to me or see me. I take his picture to Congress. I take it to Tallahassee. I go into the senator's office and introduce my son by the picture, and I give him an affidavit and tell him a little bit about his story. And
we'll be learning a little bit about it. We'll be learning a bit about it on the train we take.
This is Bradford dealing with guardianship issues. My son's guardian is a former undercover narcotic agent with the Seminole County Sheriff's Department. He has a lot of influence with the judges, with the sheriff, and no one wants to bother to do anything about the abuse that he's doing to my disabled son. It's a very difficult situation to deal with when the man has so much power. So it is different than a lot of situations. I don't have any idea of any money that my son has. Right now, currently, he probably has zero. And I'm not interested in that. I just want to see my son. I want to take care of him. He's dying of aspiration pneumonia. And this Seminole County undercover narcotic agent, David Commanderio, is not even letting the young man get a hug from his mother or talk to me, or he lets him go to the hospital with no accompaniment. He can't push anyone away. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the judge that I've been dealing with for over 9 years. Her name is Judge Nancy Alley. Before she became an attorney, she was a legal guardian, and then she became an elder, I believe you call it elder law attorney. Then she became a judge. And for the 18th Judicial Circuit, she wrote a manual on how to handle guardianship when you become a guardian. The major part of the manual describes how you can find jewelry in a person's home. She says, go to the ward's home and look in cold cream jars, because very often elderly people hide diamond rings in cold cream jars. This tells you a lot about this judge and where her mind is, and the issues are money and greed. I'd really like you to understand what Judge Nancy Alley has done. She has gone so far as to write an order for her friend, Sergeant Commanderio, stating that I cannot make any criminal reports to the police or any agency in reference to his behavior or his abuse of my son. I have a copy of the order. This is the judicial qualifications complaint that I made in reference to Judge Nancy Alley and her writing the order disallowing me to make criminal complaints against the guardian. So I did complain to the Judicial Qualifications Committee, and they sent me a letter back saying that it was not going to be dealt with. And so I've been reporting the harassment of the guardian of my son. He is a deputy sheriff, and he's been having people do pullovers on me because I complained about him. And my son registered a complaint with the Sheriff's Department about his guardian. So what he's been doing, and I've reported it, and there are police reports that go unheeded by the police department. He's also threatened me and my husband and my son's life, and we have recordings that he left on our telephone. And the day before yesterday, I had another hearing. I've been going through hearings over the last 8.5 years. My son's guardian was subpoenaed to come into the courtroom and produce documents. He did not show up, and he was required by this subpoena to bring my son into the courtroom unsedated with his communication device, and he did not bring my son into the courtroom. So the judge did not. I carried this photograph into the hearing to show Judge Stacy, my son, and I was hoping that his guardian would honor the subpoena and bring him into the courtroom, but this is about the third time he's refused to show up. He typically tells people that he is a Seminole County Sheriff Deputy and he has more authority than the judge. And he tells that to the people at the home where my son lives and tells them, do not let Brad's mother come into the house to visit him because he's the guardian and he's a sheriff's deputy, so he has more power than the judge. Some of the people that work there from the Dominican Republic, and they actually believe that in the United States, a deputy and a guardian has more authority than the judge.
So that that CD is a tape of his threats to you.
Yes. My son and I, when we realized that Seminole County Sheriff Deputy Sergeant Commanderio was applying for guardianship, and we really didn't know him. He's a distant relative of my former husband, but he knew about the state that was going to go to my son. Well, when my son found out he was applying for guardianship, he told me, Mom, I don't want him as guardian. So we went to the sheriff's department to talk to him and find out what he might want, what his plans were for Brad, why he wanted guardianship. And we talked to Chief Harriet. After we talked to him, and they said that they would talk to Sergeant Commanderio and have him get in touch with us to explain, why he wanted guardianship of Brad. Well, that never happened. He began to threaten us because we went over his head. We went to Superior to complain, and he called us and he threatened our lives, my husband, Roy Gilhooly, and myself and my son, and he left voice messages. So at one point we had the recording made into a CD. And that is working on a committee in reference to some legislature that may affect the guardianship.
And it's Senator Soko?
Yes. So I gave her a picture of my son, and I gave her a copy of this affidavit. And in this affidavit, I say that
Are you filming us?
Attorneys and judges and professional guardians in the state of Florida who are taking advantage of elderly and disabled people.
Oh, God. In Illinois, they take advantage of children.
And what do you know about the predatory abuse in guardianship cases?
What is predatory abuse?
And professional guardians that actually
Abuse, say, in the Chicago Tribune, where facilities that are supposed to take care of minors are using them, are letting them go out into the streets, into prostitution, are not delivering the classes, but just letting the kids sit and watch TV. It's been a huge scandal, and a number of facilities have been closed down. So I'd love to tell you that it's limited to Florida, but it certainly isn't. Illinois has its share.
providing us with a nice cup of coffee.
Enjoy.
You know, I was thinking about how grateful I am for people in this nation that are concerned about my son and other people like my son who are innocent and have done no harm to anyone else, but the fact that they had some money coming to them brought these predatory guardians and attorneys into his life. And I'm thankful for the people that put their energy in and you know, just care, making an effort like you're doing, like your organization is doing, like your filming company is doing. You don't know me, you never met my son, and yet you have enough concern for humanity that you're down here. You flew in to find out as much as you can about the situation with the predatory guardians, and I'm very thankful.
I'm going to tell you about my son Brad. He's a brilliant young man. He uses a communication device like Stephen Hawkins. In fact, he met Stephen Hawkings. But his injury to his brain is called cerebral palsy, and that affects only the muscles. Your tongue is a large muscle, so when you meet someone with cerebral palsy and they communicate with you, they always have this heavy tongue sound. And but their cognitive level is sky high in many cases. Just take a look at Stephen Hawking, the physicist. He looks like he's severely retarded and he can't use his muscles, but he's a brilliant man. My son Brad Rutkosky is a brilliant young man. The problem is that he was going to inherit some money, and Sergeant David Commanderia was aware of it, and when we were out of town got guardianship of Brad and isolated him. So now he's not permitted to use his communication device. And anyway, I just appreciate the folks that are interested in helping. When I discovered this guardianship situation with my son and the abuses that he was experiencing, I went to Washington. I talked to my congressman. I made trips to Washington. I've contacted President Obama. I've written to him and each one of my congressmen. My governor has information on the predator guardian in my son's case, being a sheriff deputy and misusing his authority to intimidate everyone that tries to stop his abuse of my son. I have been to the state attorney's office. I've been to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and I just it's been years that I thought I was doing this all by myself until I went on YouTube and discovered all of the other people in the state of Florida and the United States that were suffering the same kind of abuses. So, you know, I appreciate all the people that have taken an interest. And, my experience is recently, within the last month, I've personally visited Judge Evander. He's the Judicial Qualifications Committee. I was personally in Tallahassee and took my complaint about this Judge Nancy Alley. Personally took my documents up there. Then I went to Evander, who is the chair of the Judicial Qualifications Committee. I took my son's picture and I took my story about Judge Nancy Alley and her security person that got guardianship of my son. And I spoke to his secretary, his JA. It was a federal office and they wouldn't let me into his area, but I told my story and showed my picture to his judicial assistant. And she said, well, this needs to go back to the Judicial Qualifications Committee. It has to go through the channels. And I said, it's already been there. And I just would like him to know that my son is a human being. And so I've visited his office. And so I've made trips to a variety of